I was standing on my parents' front porch with a lemon cake in my hands when I heard my mother say my name. I had my keys looped on one finger and my knuckles half raised to knock. The screen door was open behind the storm door, and her voice carried clean through the mesh. She was telling my brother not to worry about the debt. "We'll have your sister cover it," she said. "She never refuses family. I never did get to ring that bell." What I did in the 7 days after that afternoon, and what my mother's face did when she finally knocked on my door, is the part I still turn over in my head at night. Welcome back to Calm Drama Stories. I'm Kendra. I'm 34. This is the week my family discovered that the daughter who never said no finally learned how. If you have ever been the one everyone quietly leans on, this one is going to land close to home. Drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. I should have just knocked. That is the thing I keep coming back to. If I had knocked, I would have walked into a different version of my life. The one where I didn't know. Instead, I stood there with the cake getting warm against my palms, and I listened. Travis was talking first, low and miserable, the way he gets when the money runs out. He said the collectors were calling his cell now. He said Brooke was frightened. He said he didn't know how he was going to make it through the month, and my mother Sharon made that soft clucking sound she makes. The one that always meant everything was going to be fine because she had decided it would be. "Don't stress about the debt, baby," she said. "We'll have your sister cover it." There was a pause, a chair creaked. Then she said the line I have not been able to unhear since. "She never refuses family." I waited for someone to disagree. I waited for my father to say something, anything, like maybe that's not fair, or maybe we should ask her first. He didn't. I heard the small grunt that passes for my father agreeing with my mother, and that was all. They weren't going to ask me. That was the part that turned my stomach to ice. This wasn't a request that hadn't been made yet. This was a decision that had already been settled in a kitchen I grew up in about money I had earned without a single one of them thinking they needed my voice in the room. I set the lemon cake down on the top step very carefully like it might go off. I walked back to my car. I did not slam the door. I drove the 12 minutes home with both hands on the wheel and my mind doing the only thing it knows how to do when it's afraid. It started counting. Here's the thing you need to know about me. I count. I have counted for as long as I can remember. I am a bookkeeper. I keep the ledgers for 3 small businesses in town, a hardware store, a dental office, and a landscaping outfit. And I am very good at it. People think numbers are cold. I think numbers are the most honest thing in the world. Numbers don't have a tone. Numbers don't sigh at you across a kitchen table. Numbers just sit there and tell you the truth. And the truth is usually that someone took more than they put back. I learned to keep books before I learned to drive. I was 16 when the plant let my father go in 2009, and the bills started arriving faster than anyone in that house wanted to look at them. My mother couldn't face the envelopes. My father just stopped opening the mail, so I started a notebook. I wrote down what came in and what went out. I called the electric company and set up a payment plan in a voice I made sound older than I was. Somewhere in there, without anyone ever saying it out loud, I became the one who handled things. The fixer, the responsible one, the daughter you could hand a problem to and trust it would get resolved quietly, without drama, without a fuss. It became who I was. And the trouble with becoming the person who never says no is that everyone around you stops being able to imagine you saying it. They stop hearing it as a possibility. By the time I was driving home from that porch, I already knew in the cold, mathematical part of me exactly how much money my husband and I had saved. I knew it to the dollar, and I knew they were going to come for it. We had $61,000. I am telling you the number because the number matters. It was not family money. It was not a windfall or an inheritance or anything that fell out of the sky. It was 11 years of 2 people who packed their own lunches. Daniel runs wire for a living. He's an electrician, and I keep books. And between us, we are not wealthy, and we never pretended to be. We saved that money the boring way, a little at a time in a savings account I balanced every single month. And most of it was not even really ours anymore. Not in the way that mattered to my heart. Most of it was earmarked. Daniel and I had been trying to have a baby for 4 years. We had been through 2 rounds of IVF that didn't take, and the grief of that is a whole story I am not going to put you through tonight. What you need to know is that the bulk of that $61,000 was the 3rd round. It was the appointment we hadn't scheduled yet because I kept flinching at the cost. It was the maybe baby we were still saving toward dollar by careful dollar. So when I stood on that porch and heard my mother promise my brother's debt away, using my account like it was a shared well. She wasn't reaching for my savings. She was reaching for the child we hadn't had yet. I don't think she knew that. I want to be fair even now. I don't think Sharon sat there doing the math on what that money was meant for, but that is almost worse, isn't it? She didn't even need to know what she was taking. She just assumed it was hers to take. Daniel was home before me, boots off, reading something on his phone at the kitchen table. He looked up when I came in without the cake and saw my face. He's not a dramatic man. In 8 years of marriage, I have seen him raise his voice maybe twice, and both times it was at a referee. He just put the phone down and said, "Tell me." So I told him about the porch and the screen door and the chair creaking and the line. "We'll have your sister cover it. She never refuses family." He listened the whole way through without interrupting, which is a thing I love about him. And when I finished, he was quiet for a second. He didn't get angry the way I expected. He didn't say we should march over there. He just looked at me with that steady look he gets when he's working out a problem. The same look he has when he's tracing a fault in somebody's old wiring. "Okay," he said, "so here's what we do." He laid it out plain. He said the savings account was the exposure. He said as long as the money was sitting where it had always sat, where my family knew it sat, it might as well have a sign on it. He said open a new account in my name only at a bank none of them banked at and start moving it tonight. Not next week, not after I'd had a chance to talk to my mother and feel better. Tonight. Move every penny, he said. Tonight. He wasn't taking it over. That's the part I need you to understand. He didn't grab my laptop or make the calls for me. He handed me the idea, and then he got up and made me a cup of tea while I sat there and stared at the number I knew by heart, and I started to think like myself again. The first call came the very next morning. My mother is not a patient woman when she has decided something. I was at my desk with my second coffee when her name lit up my phone, and I knew, before I answered, that this was the opening move. She was gentle. That's how I knew. Sharon is sweetest right before she asks for something. She started with, "How was I? How was Daniel? Wasn't the weather turning?" And then she drifted the way she does toward the real subject like a current pulling at a boat. "Your brother's going through a rough stretch," she said. "You know how Travis is. He just needs the family to close ranks." I held the phone and I said the things you say. That's hard. I'm sorry to hear it. I did not say what I knew. I have learned that the most powerful thing you can do with a person who is fishing is to simply not be a fish. She probed. She asked, light as anything, whether Daniel and I were doing okay money-wise with everything. She mentioned twice that we'd always been the steady ones. And then she said something that caught in me like a hook. "I was thinking," she said, "about that account you and I still have together from your grandmother's care. We should sit down about that, you and me." I said something about needing to get back to work. I hung up and I sat very still. I had forgotten about that account. I had genuinely forgotten it existed. And the fact that my mother had not forgotten, the fact that she had reached for it first thing, told me she had been thinking about it for a while. She had a map of my money in her head, and there was a door on that map I had left unlocked years ago. Travis showed up 2 days later. He didn't call first, which is very Travis. He just rolled into my driveway in the truck he still owed money on and wandered up to my door with his hands in his pockets, like he was doing me a favor by visiting. My brother is 31, and he has the gift, which I have never had, of believing that his bad luck is something the universe owes him a refund on. He sat at my kitchen table and drank my coffee and told me a long, winding story about the bar. The bar was his big idea 3 years ago, the one our parents co-signed a chunk of. It collapsed the way bars fail, slowly and then all at once. And instead of cutting his losses, he tried to win it back, and I caught the word online and the word blackjack before he caught himself and changed it to investments. 30,000 from the bar, 18 more from the thing he wouldn't name, $48,000 of whole. "You've got it good, Ken," he said, looking around my kitchen like it was a showroom. "You and Daniel, steady jobs, no kids draining you, money just sitting there." He said it like an accusation, like my stability was a thing I'd taken from him. My phone buzzed on the counter while he was still talking. It was Brooke, his wife, and the message was already loaded and waiting like she'd been timing it. "Family helps family," it said. "Hope you're not too busy with your IVF stuff to remember that." I read it twice. The cruelty of it was so casual she probably didn't even feel it leave her hand. I put the phone face down. I refilled my brother's coffee, and I said nothing because I had finally figured out what I was going to do, and it was not going to happen at my kitchen table. After Travis left, I stood in my kitchen and I made a decision. I was not going to fight them. I want to be honest about why. Because it isn't what you might think. It wasn't that I was scared of them. It wasn't that I couldn't stand up for myself. It was that I knew from a lifetime of watching exactly how a disagreement with my mother goes. You raise your voice, she raises hers, she cries, somebody storms out, and a week later, nothing has changed except now you're the bad guy who made your mother cry. A fight was a game they knew how to win. Numbers were a game I knew how to win. So I made myself a different kind of promise. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to do what I do for a living. I was going to take every loose, emotional, manipulative claim they were going to throw at me and turn it into something with a date and a dollar sign next to it. I was going to move the money where it belonged. I was going to find out exactly where I was exposed and close every door I had the right to close. And I was going to build a record, a clean, quiet, undeniable record of every single thing this family had ever taken and never returned. I'm a bookkeeper. I don't argue, I reconcile. And once you've decided to reconcile a thing, the question stops being, how do I feel about this? The question becomes a simpler one, the only question that has ever made sense to me. Where did the money actually go? And who actually owes who? The next morning, I drove to a credit union on the other side of town, one nobody in my family had ever set foot in, and I opened an account in my name only. It took 40 minutes and my driver's license and a smile at a young teller named Haley, who had no idea she was helping me dismantle 30 years of being the family bank. I want to tell you, it felt dramatic. It didn't. It felt like filing. It felt like the dozens of small, boring, correct things I do every day that nobody ever notices. The kind of quiet competence that holds a person's whole life together while everyone assumes it runs on its own. I went home and I sat down at the laptop and I began to move the money the way you'd move something fragile across a room. A little, then confirm it landed, then a little more. I did it in daylight with the records open, every transfer dated and labeled, because if there is one thing my job has taught me, it is that the person with the cleanest paper trail wins every argument before it starts. While I worked, I heard my mother's voice in my head. She never refuses family. She'd said it like a fact about the weather, like gravity. And the strange thing was, she wasn't wrong. I never had refused them. Not the time Travis needed first and last on an apartment. Not the time my father's truck threw a transmission. Not the Christmas the heating bill came due and nobody else had it. I'd covered all of it quietly year after year, and I'd told myself it was love. Sitting there moving my own money out of my own family's reach, I started to wonder for the first time whether it had ever once been love going the other direction, or whether love had just been the word they used for the bill they handed me. The savings were secure by Thursday. I should have felt finished. I didn't because somewhere in the back of my mind, a number kept tapping on the glass. And on Thursday night, I finally remembered what it was, the joint account. Years ago when my grandmother got sick, somebody had to manage her care money, and that somebody was me, because of course it was. To make it simple, my mother and I had opened a joint checking account together back in 2016 to pay Grandma's bills out of. Grandma passed in 2019. The account never got closed. It just sat there, the two of us still on it, mostly empty, a leftover I'd stopped thinking about. I called the bank Friday morning and asked to close it. The woman on the line was kind and very clear. A joint account, she explained, belongs equally to both owners. Either one of us could put money in or take money out without the other's say-so. But closing it fully needed both account holders to agree. I could pull my own contributions out. I could remove myself from future deposits, but I could not, sitting alone at my desk on a Friday, simply make that account disappear with my mother still on it. I hung up and I sat with that. It was the one door I couldn't shut by myself. And it landed on me, slow and cold, just how smart Daniel's advice had been. If I had left my savings where they'd always been, if I had waited even another week, my mother could have walked into a branch and moved money out of accounts she had access to and called it a family matter. She had a key to one room of my financial house. I just spent the week emptying every other room she didn't.